Hello, greetings. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Blueprint of the New for the month of May in 2021. Apologies for being a couple of minutes late. I was trying to post live on Facebook, and for some reason, of course, they changed something, so there's no live on Facebook. But I will post a YouTube video, a link to a YouTube video later after we finish the show. So things keep changing. They keep changing all the time, as we find out just before the show. So welcome, dear friends. My name is Alexis Sersha, and I'm broadcasting from far north Queensland. And I'm very, very happy and honored to be doing this kind of work, this kind of joy that is such a pleasure to be doing. Sometimes, it it does require a lot of preparation. And what I mean by the preparation is just that I have to really be in that zone, connected, because I not very often, but all the time, like I live the themes that we talked about, especially the week just before this kind of show that goes live. And we're still waiting for anyone else that perhaps might will join us live. And I also welcome all of you that will watch this later, because you too are very much present here with us now, are very much, your energy is very much present in the co-creation of this safe space, of this round table of friendships and cooperation. And I also welcome, of course, our non physical friends, which are always around to assist, to encourage, and to just radiate their joy. Because life is joy. There is so much joy when you connect with your own creativity, when you connect with your own self. And so I would also like to invite you to check out my website, alexissersha.com, and check out the upcoming courses that are coming up. There is one on 29th of May called Sensuality, and that will be presented by Saint Germain, our dear friend Saint Germain. He is very much involved with this era, with the Aquarian era, and he's very much involved with the change of consciousness on the global scale within humanity. He loves humanity. He loves each and every one of us, and he loves working, and he gets working with us, and he gets so excited from his heart. He gets so excited with all the different breakthroughs that he sees you experiencing. And also later this year, there will be a 3 month journey essence, and that will be presented by Mary Magdalene and Yeshua. And I haven't worked with them in this way before, where the two of them will be presenting the show. Well, the 3 month journey deeper to connect, to realize, to become aware of your own Christ self, and bring it into this new era, this new Aquarian era. So that's coming on later this year. And otherwise, please also check out the private sessions and also the members page. So within the members page, you get charged every 30 days. And I keep uploading all the different sparks from the field. We've got a live show just like this every month. And there is a library, and also there is with the live shows, I add them to the library, so the library keeps growing. There's also a heartbeat where I post updates in text, and you do also get 20% discount on all of the other other services that I do. You get access to the page where you book at 20%. So for example, if you are thinking of doing a private session, you can join for a month and book a private session, and then cancel. You have access for 30 days, and then if you don't like the content, you can always cancel, and you still have that access for the first 30 days. So I would like to invite you to check that out. And what so much is happening in this world, And yet, for so many of us that have done this work, that have allowed our own soul, and there are many, many different expressions of soul or eternal self or the I am that I am, but we just keep it simple for this kind of live show. And so, with this, when I talk about soul, I kind of mean, your soul self, your I am that I am, interchangeably. And there are more in-depth courses where and discussions where we talk about all of the different sort of meanings, and ultimately, you come to a place when all of these parts, they merge into this beautiful wholeness in yourself. And you can always realize yourself, okay, so I'm at the moment talking from my human part. I am at the moment talking from my master self. I'm at the moment talking from my I am that I am. More, it's kind of more like, for me, more like in percentages, because there really isn't a barrier, like a direct barrier, clear barrier between one part or the other. And when I live my life, I don't really even think about these kind of things. um, but sometimes it does come to the foreground, and especially at the beginning, when you're first starting this life, when you're first realizing this life and allowing, you do clearly know, get to know the difference between your human self and your soul self and your I am that I am. And it is this beautiful, beautiful dance between the three of them, that your life, that just creates and co-creates your life in such a different way. And from the human self, you have to be, as a human self that keeps touching these gigantic parts of itself. And also then when it becomes aware of this much larger space, and there's so much in that space, like even when you go for a walk, you can feel the presence of all these beings, of forest as a whole, of individual trees, and all these beings and creatures. And it's just absolutely beautiful and amazing to feel such aliveness. And also, for example, let's say when I am walking, all of these ideas in this dance, and me allowing, so when I can be the most relaxed, I allow the most, and I allow this expansion to occur. And that's where all these creative ideas come so much, as to all of the things that are possible. And that's where I play with the potentials. And the more I can allow and expand, the more potentials I see. And sometimes I play with the potentials, and I can relive it just like that. Like, for example, I go for a walk, and I can kind of live a whole potential just for a walk, and I don't have to like then co-create it within the physical world. But then at other times, I know that yes, I choose this potential, and then everything kind of aligns, so that I go into that space, so that I start experiencing it. And all of a sudden, all the different things, the information, perhaps even like things like YouTube videos that come to me all of a sudden, are part of that new potential that I have experienced. Now, for the human self, at times it is not, it can be frustrating, because there is, especially when you start walking this walk. And yes, here we are, Michael, and we too greet you, and you can see how easy it is to step, or to rather to allow the great, the bigger, the vaster part of yourself to be also part of this earthly experience, to be also part of this physical experience. It is effortless, it is with grace, it is with ease, it is with panache. And this is what your life becomes, like one of these great big paintings that is continually painting itself. Or you can call it as a poem that is continually writing itself, because it is like this one gigantic, huge, never ending love story. Love story that keeps growing, keep expanding, keeps developing in all different spaces, the depth, the width, the height. It keeps going deeper and deeper and deeper. And yet, this connection, as Alexis was explaining, does require 100% from the human self. Because, like, perhaps if you've noticed, once you really have the eyes to see for the wild creatures, they are 100% alive. They may be peacefully resting, and yet you can see just how alive they are. And so, too, your human self in this relationship becomes alive, becomes like this instrument that plays the music that your soul self, that your that I am continually falls in love with. It is a player of this instrument, and yet it keeps falling in love with its own creation. And yes, we can hear some of the minds saying that, but Mikhail, this is a very, very serious time. Look at what is going on in the world. And yet this is exactly when we choose, that we sing, that we praise, that we play, that we live, that we co-create the love. For the self-love is the beginning and the answer to everything. And yet all of these things like self-love, trust, things like this, they are of the highest learning. Because if you do go and walk down on the street and you talk to a person that perhaps is still living in that separation, that perhaps has not even thought about these things, how do you approach this subject? How do you explain all of the things that you have experienced, so that you now can trust, so that you now can open, so that you now can allow yourself to be joyful in the face of all of the things that are happening, in the face of chaos? For you now know and trust that chaos is a new beginning. Chaos is but not a chaos at all. Chaos is this great big palette of paints from which new can be painted from. And we are asking you to allow yourself to dream in this way, to envision in this way. For some of you, we know that you have perhaps lost your dreams, you have closed yourself to the dreams. But remember that the dreams that you perhaps have closed yourself to were perhaps human dreams. And this is what Alexis started mentioning before, because the human self, the values between the human and the I am that I am, are in such, can be so different. And at times that, they can look like they are irreconcilable. And the dreams of the human that it had before when it was walking in the separation, when it was walking alone, are very different. They were very small. They were very, we don't want to put down those dreams, but in many ways insignificant, because the reality of the dance, of the wholeness, of the dance of your soul connection, of your soul being present, all of those things that used to be dreams, they are like specks of dust. And yet, for the part of you, they can still feel huge. They feel unfulfilled, and perhaps they keep coming back as an aspect nagging at you, saying, look, but you can't trust. You have to doubt, because look at all of the things that haven't happened. You wished for them. You perhaps did all this positive thinking. You perhaps did all the courses on how to make them true. But there is underneath it all a bigger picture. And when you do, take that deep breath and allow yourself to fall into that embrace of yourself, of embrace of your soul self. You start realizing, you're starting to see the value. Even though at times the human self begrudgingly does that and tests the soul self, it tests the patience, it tests the compassion of, let's see if what you're talking about, let's see if all this information, that this feeling that you're giving me, this unconditional love, really is true, and that is all appropriate. For the human self always will find the unconditional love and compassion in its greater self, in its I am that I am. It never will find any limitations there. And yet, there is within this lifetime of yours a greater theme, a theme that is much more satisfying than that mind knows, than that mind allows itself to know. There are real values, there are real subjects and things and potentials that as a soul you want to experience in this physical reality that perhaps doesn't include those little dreams that the limited human had. And those weren't its dreams, really. It were the dreams of mass consciousness, dreams that it picked up. It was preconceived ideas, it was expectations. Because, as you know, for many of you, before you really allowed, before you opened up, perhaps you came to the end of the line of all of those. You see, because it can be much harder when you realize those dreams that you dreamed as a human being and you realize they didn't bring you the so called happiness. They didn't bring you the satisfaction. Perhaps they did momentarily. Because you see, the physical world was not built for a lasting separation, it was built to change. It was built for that transformation. So within that mass consciousness way of being, where the human being is separated from its greater self, from its soul self, that was not meant to last forever. And so within that limitation, there isn't possible this happiness. There isn't possible a continual lasting satisfaction. Because sooner or later, for each person, for each human being, comes that time when they do have to deal with the greater realities of itself. And so when we touch upon all of these things, we want you to feel, we want you to appreciate, we want you to remember all of those things that you've already experienced, all of the wisdoms that you have gained from your experiences, and then to continue on in this dance. Because even when you do realize yourself and you are fully aware of your soul self, you are fully aware as an I am that I am, that, as we mentioned before, is but a beginning. And there is still, when where you are in the physical world, surrounded by the mass consciousness, by other people that are living in separation, there are many different sort of days, hours, and events that you experience. And the human self becomes, as we said, so alive. And its aliveness, you can see it in the eyes. It doesn't go well with many people who are dead to the life. They are dead to themselves. And yet within them, you awaken the possibilities, you awaken the potentials that perhaps they didn't know they had. You see, because with your energy, you touch, with your radiance, you touch others. So if someone was to ask, to inquire of you, well, that what does this self-love mean that you talk about so much, that self-trust? You see, because before you come to that, there are so many different things that you have to experience as a human being before you come to that higher learning that those things are, the self-love and the self-trust in this dense reality. There really is no higher learning. For all the rest after that is but a play, is but a joy, is a continuation of those themes, you see, because those ones, they are the hardest. Only the master can achieve them at a level that some of you are. Only a master can love themselves despite everything, despite what they see, despite expectations, despite all of the ancestral stuff and all of the different pressures that you experience within this physical reality, in this co-creation. And so we admire all of you, wherever you are, and we admire you for your ability and for your abilities to feel, and for your choices that you keep making, because those choices and what you are choosing for yourself, not for anyone else but for yourself, is what is changing this world. And many would say the world is not changing for the better. And yet, was it better to be living the same things, but being not allowed for those things, those pains, those inequalities, inequities, all of those things to be hidden, and to still be working, very present, just not out in the open, you see? So the world hasn't really, as you know, gone worse. It's just that everything is just out there to be seen. You can see things that used to be hidden, because this inner journey, it is all about allowing everything of yourself to become visible. But visible to whom? Of course, others that also realize they can see much more deeply into you, just as they can see deeply with clarity into themselves. But it really has to all comes down always to yourself, to the individual human being, because it is you that need to see. It is you that you open up to. It is you that you open up all of those spaces that didn't have love, that didn't know love, that lived in shame. And there are all of you, all of us that have lived for many lifetimes on this earth. We have experienced everything. We were the victim and the villain and the everything, and all of that is coming to a point in this lifetime of your realization, in this lifetime of integration. It is all coming home. Home where? Home to the I am that I am, to your soul, not home to the human self. You see, human self, this gorgeous, gorgeous human self, that can be so, in many ways, naughty, because once it is loved from such a space, once it realizes that it is eternal, once it realizes, yeah, just how loved it is, and just how free it is, and just how creative it is, and how it can play, and how it can just not worry. It becomes fearless. It lives in such a wonderful, wonderful way, regardless of what is going on outside, and even on regardless of what can be going on inside, because the frustrations can become bigger. You become much more sensitive to everything that goes on around you and with others, and yet your human self becomes outrageously happy. That real happiness, that real well-being that comes from this direct knowingness, not just thinking about it, but the experience that out of every argument, that out of every hole, that out of every dark hole that it ever has put itself into, that it ever has talked itself into, that it has ever believed itself into, there is a way out. You see, from everything there is a way out. You start looking at your things not as problems but as an issue. Yes, I have an issue. It can be a huge issue, it can be an extremely painful issue. And perhaps in the past, that issue, you have an issue, and all of a sudden it takes over your life, and all of a sudden there is depression, there is no movement of energy, there is all sorts of things, stagnation. When when in this space, you know that the issue is like this, and you have this whole other life that you have. You see, it all goes into a smaller perspective, and even then you can't even call it an issue, because when you really feel into it, when you allow it, when you allow the presence of your soul to be with that so called issue, all of these creative solutions pop up, all of these creative things as to how you can resolve that pop up. And some of the things, of course, yes, they are very deep, deep core things that go so deeply, that reach so deeply, aspects that you identify with so deeply, that have scared you, that have overwhelmed you, that have tortured you from inside, that really have been creating drama upon drama on the inside, if not even on the outside, that perhaps they've attracted all these people that you have, that were hurting you also from the outside. And you wonder, and you find yourself wondering as a human self, like, why can't I resolve this? But if you really can feel underneath that, you can realize that, you know, as a soul, you came here to experience what it's like to no longer be overwhelmed by things that used to overwhelm you, whether that be fears, whether that be certain types of energies that certain people can have, whether that be certain types of painful things. It matters not. Is it not, when you really feel deeply into it, is it not better? Is it not much more worth to your own self, to your own wisdom, to master that, rather than to put it somewhere away, pretend it's not there? You see, so once you master it, it becomes powerless. Once you master those intense emotions that perhaps they used to overwhelm you, when you are going through this kind of integrations, those emotions become even stronger. It can affect your body. Perhaps you can even have like a temporary disease or something like that, because they're so deep, they are so embedded. And yet all throughout that, you can practice that mastery of trust, of self-love, because you really, in the end, you don't really have any more choice. Once you choose this kind of journey, you can just choose to keep suffering, or you choose to know it. It doesn't matter where I perceive myself to have failed, where I perceive myself that I wasn't good, where that I was bad, whatever that your mind is telling you, that the shame is telling you, that the guilt is telling you, you choose self-love. You choose connection with your soul. You choose trust over and over and over. And sometimes that can be for months. But even as you choose that, you can perceive yourself as feeling differently. You perceive yourself perhaps in certain times that that corridor, that black hole can open just a little bit. It is just a bit wider. And before you know it, all of a sudden, you realize, even when you're in those depths of those emotions, you realize all of a sudden that you have a choice. And you realize that you have a choice. You can do things differently, that you can step out of this. And this is where your mastery comes through. And once you master that, then the fear of it falls away, you see. And then you experience this new freedom, because before, let's say if some person carried the energy that would trigger this part of you, you would have to avoid them. You would have to fear them. You would have to think, oh, what about if I meet someone like that? Or you go somewhere, you meet someone like that, and perhaps you don't go there. But now you have the freedom. You can do anything. You can go anywhere, because regardless of whether other people still carry that energy, you are no longer triggered. So these are the kind of things that your soul puts priority on, rather than perhaps a temporary comfortable, being comfortable perhaps, you see, because it, as a human being, you say, well, but look how long I've been uncomfortable, look how long my body has been uncomfortable with this particular part, with this particular aspect, so why don't you just make it go away? But unless it integrates, you never master it, you see. You're always then a slave to it. And your soul is not into slavery. Your soul, even though it doesn't always appear like that to the human while it's going through those kind of things, when you really feel into it, and we invite you that you feel into those things to experience the value of what it feels like, even if you haven't yet. But if you start, instead of giving in to this feeling, to feel the value of what it feels like when you have mastered that, when the wisdom was squeezed out of that, then you know what your soul feels. You see, and these are those kind of differences, perceived differences between what the human can perceive, how the human looks at things and values things, and how the soul looks at and values things. And again, it is up to each individual as to how you go about living this, because you see, this is something that you work out within yourself, how you're going to work this out, how you're going, how, what kind of attitude you're going to look at all of these differences. Is your human self willing to play with this? Is your human self willing to, okay, perhaps sometimes grudgingly, to say, okay, show me what is a different view of what I would, what this thing is signifying, you see, because always, always, always you have that knowledge, because everything comes as whole. Everything comes as whole. So whether, you know, you, wherever you are within a particular, let's say, issue, it comes to you as whole experience. So it means that it has within it something to resolve, and also it means that it has within it solution as well. And yes, I can hear some of you saying that you haven't, you can't believe that, because some of the problems that you have had perhaps are lifelong. Perhaps you're experiencing perhaps a life threatening disease, or things like that. And yet, even within that, there is mastery, dear ones. Especially within that, dear friends, there is mastery. And there is nothing, nothing that is a coincidence within this such an important lifetime of yours. There is always the deeper learning. There is always the deeper wisdom to be gleaned, to be experienced. And remember that underneath it all, there are always those kind of qualities of freedom, of sovereignty, of mastery. And when you can focus on these within any situation, but it has to be your situation. You see, you cannot impose this on another person. You cannot say, well, look, this person is giving me problems, or let's say, look at the conflict over there. So, how am I going to inject this wisdom into that? That doesn't work at this level. It is only things your own relationship to it, your own co-creation with it, and your own compassion to what other people are choosing. So all of these, the wisdom, the freedom, and the sovereignty, well, freedom, sovereignty, and mastery, look at every, feel into every situation that you have, and allow those to come to the forefront, because every situation that you have will contain those, will contain that. Because when you allow yourself really to feel the incredible love between the parts of yourself, the incredible love that your soul self has for itself and you as a human, a part of itself, then that love is just so incredibly deep, so incredibly vast, so incredibly experiential, that through that you can see and you can look at everything that has happened to you, even the most painful, the most horror filled thing. You can see traces of those things within, where it had to do with your freedom, your mastery, your integration, your sovereignty, all of those things, you see. So look for those, feel for those, and that will automatically, already just feeling that, looking at anything that is happening in your life just through those kind of feelings, those kind of inner eyes, it will change that situation. And yes, it can be a challenge because within this world, the physical world, you often, if it is like a full on something that has been happening with you for a long time, you do have to do it over and over again. And when you do it over and over again through that process, when you keep choosing love, when you keep choosing your soul self, all of the solutions come, the ideas. You truly become a genius within your own life because of the kind of ideas that keep sparking, that keep lightening up in your head as to how you can do things. And it's got nothing to do with perhaps what you read in a book, perhaps what you read in self-help books, you see, because all of a sudden you see how your life already contains anything that you can possibly want. And then yes, you do have to choose it, and you do have to follow that, and you do implement that, and you get support, and you get love, and you get encouragement from your inner self for all of those kind of things. And if you make a mistake, it is no longer a mistake, it is just another wisdom gaining experience. You see, so you look at yourself from such a different point of view. And there is so much to experience for the human self. This incredibly creative art form of life, of living, that you live because it permeates every part of your life, how you do things. Not only that you create something to share, or in paintings or in poetry, it is how you cook, it is how you present for yourself, it is how you keep your place clean, it is how you set up beautiful things to keep your space enjoyable for you. It is where you go, it is all of a sudden where you discover these places within your sphere that were that were there all the time, and yet your energy in where you were didn't allow you to notice them before, to see them before, the synchronicities and everything that happens. Now, for someone who is at the beginning of this journey of the awakening, what we speak of can be a fantasy, for it truly is for a person, for a human being that is still disconnected. It truly is in what we talk about, what you experience in the realm of fantasy. Because on the outside, you can still then look the same as everyone else. You see, but people can perceive there is something different about you. And for some people, they will dislike that. You do lose many people because it triggers them. All sorts of things happen, and yet you have the ability to absolutely deal with that. There is nothing, it is like you're one of those balls, on the top of the water. You can push, someone can push it inside, and yet it pops up, and someone can try to push it inside, and it's harder and harder to push it under the water. I mean, inside into the water, and yet it just keeps popping up. And that's what happens, because it's like you have this kind of sacred oil on the inside of you, and everything just washes through you. And yes, when you are not, perhaps you have one of those days and everything can go wrong. But dear friends, that is only one day. And the next day you pop right back up. But yes, the journey to come into this space can be through all of the different, very challenging times, perhaps, when you're dealing with fears, when you're dealing with anxiety, when you're dealing with body issue, when you're dealing with everything coming to a head. And people are at different places at different times, and it doesn't really, you can't often say, well, this is ahead, this person's ahead, this person's behind it, really, because the journey is just so individual. And yet there are some common themes. It is, everyone is such so individual, but there are some common themes. The common themes are that you get this incredible well-being, and that well-being is like in that ball, that yes, that you can have perhaps a frustrating day, even an angry day or whatever, when you want to throw all the towels in, because you've pushed yourself under the water, and yet the next day the ball pops up and back you are on the surface, happy as Larry, happy more than Larry. For those non-English speaking people, this is an English expression. So there is this underlying well-being, underlying excitement for life, underlying aliveness, underlying, mm, just having this audacity for life, audacity to do things regardless of what age you are, regardless of what gender you are. All of those things that you used to self-impose on yourself as to what is possible to do, what you can't do. You see, you constantly have these insights within yourself, these insights, like when you go into that space, when you go into that zone, you continually have the insights. All right, look at me, look where I've been into this and blah blah blah. So you're constantly expanding, you're constantly being filled with wisdom, filled with knowingness, filled with knowledge of yourself, and perceptions, and how you see, you see yourself in such different way, and you flourish in your new way of being. And everything just works out. And that working out perhaps means that you close one chapter and you move on, and you have really no problem. You see, all of these things that you used to think were problem, and they were for a separated human being, just are no longer problem yet. They don't always feel good, comfortable, but you can deal with uncomfortable things. You can tolerate very well those things that were uncomfortable before, that stopped you before because you were avoidant of them. They stopped you from doing, stopped you from opportunities, stopped you from possibilities. You see, there is just no end to benefits that allowing your soul self, allowing the I am that I am into your life is. And I can hear some saying that they haven't experienced that yet. No, and that jump from feeling separated from being in a mind to being outside of the mind is one of the biggest that you will ever do, in especially in this life, in any one lifetime. And it is an experience. People, you can read books about it, people can explain it, you can feel it in other people, there is something different about them, but it is only when it happens to you. And if you choose it, when you choose it, it will happen. Whether the experience will come in one of your vivid dreams, whether it comes through art form, whether it comes through any other form, but you will know in that moment, oh wow, so this is what it feels like to be in the embrace of your soul rather than in your mind, in the heart rather than in your mind. And it is very sensual because it is very present. It is very in the now moment. It is in your body. And to help with that, you can do certain practices like, you can touch yourself lightly and just feel that. Forget about everything else and feel that. You can go somewhere in a quiet place and be with something, perhaps next to the river, and you can decide, okay, for a certain amount of time, I'm going to sit there with the river and just keep coming back and just ask the river to help you to be coming back to the now moment. And then all of a sudden you become that now moment, and you notice all these magical things, amazing things that you didn't. And yet then perhaps it lasts only for a few seconds, because you straight away then go back into the past, back into the worries, back into thinking all the things you have to complete and do, and or the future, thinking about some person. And you just keep bringing yourself back. You keep bringing yourself back to that now moment without any beating yourself up. You just gently find yourself in the future, keep bringing yourself back, and use whatever you watch, whatever you're with to help you. Because when you focus on its attributes, perhaps you look at the water, how the light and the water play, perhaps how all of the different trees and leaves and things that are floating on the water. You see, anything like that to bring you into the now moment. And that now moment is where you are, where your body is. You see, that's what you will see, that where your body is at the moment. So let's say if I feel myself in the now moment right now, I feel my body sitting at the desk, on a chair. There's a certain temperature in this room. I'm not thinking about the future. I'm not thinking about the past. I'm not thinking what I have to do after this show is over. But I'm sitting here and feeling my legs touching my feet touching the ground. You see, so this is where now moment is where your body is. So whether you utilize that, whether by touching yourself lightly, or you feel how the temperature go into your senses, so you feel the temperature to where you are in the room or outside, you feel what you can feel. Like you feel how your hair feels, you feel how the clothes feel touching your skin, and you keep coming here, where your body is. Because in that space, where in this now moment where your body is where everything else is where your eternal self is, your I am that I am. That's where it is, its presence in this now moment. I feel it, we feel it as we speak. And yes, I can feel that you feel it also, your presence of your I am that I am. And so we've come, I believe, to the time where perhaps you have some questions. Those that have logged in through the Zoom, it is the most it is the best way to do login through the Zoom, because um, unfortunately Facebook sometimes they do change things, and unfortunately I can't sometimes fix that in time. So I will have a look at that. Alex, I will have a look at that until next time. So hopefully we can go live again on Facebook. But yes, it's best, I would suggest always to sign in through the Zoom, because then also you get a reminder a week before, and you also get a reminder a day before, and you can also do this live question. So let's have a look if we have some questions. No, we don't have any questions today. And so on this note, Mikhail, we would like to encourage you, because as you know, we have this year truly entered that Aquarian age that many call the Aquarian age. And even though there were big celebrations for some in January, then February, March, April happened, and it has been just such an intense time for so many, with all of the things that have happened, that people have actually forgotten about that. And so I would invite you to look at how is it feeling for you in the Aquarian age, in this new age, and how are you, what kind of adjustments would you want to do within your life that would make those kind of intense, that would make it easier for you, that would make those intensities, that you would be able to deal with those intensities in a more comfortable way for yourself. Because the new energies, there are so many new energies, like there are so many things happening. And this would be, like perhaps other people can explain this, have done shows that you can look at, like we're in a different space within Milky Way that has huge effect. What's happening with the sun and all of these things have a huge effect on what's happening in the physical world. What is happening with the humanity, the mass consciousness, has a huge effect. And of course, the most effect is what is happening with each and every one of you. And each and every one of you, I invite you to not procrastinate with things, but to act on things. Act in what we mean by that is that, you know what you need to change, you know what you need to do, those little changes within your life that will make your life enjoyable. And you will notice that as soon as you're doing that and you focus on that, you then forget all of those other things that are happening, and you don't contribute with your focus on those other things to make them flare up even more. But instead, you're focusing on your peace. You're focusing on your joy. You're focusing on the quality of your life, the quality of your day. And you'll see that even just making little changes, even where you drive, or perhaps for some that perhaps are in a lockdown, like all of the, perhaps what you will cook, how you will cook, how you'll look at things, perhaps you put on music and dance and things like that, just little things. But do act on them. Do act. Don't just think about them, because you know exactly what you need to do. You you know exactly what you want to do. You know exactly what you want to experience. And you will then find that even for those that are in a lockdown, in that confinement, you will find so much space for yourself. Because you see, this is the trick, dear friends. It is not that mm, you have to find like big open spaces within the physical, and that can happen too, but it is within you that you open those spaces. So if you feel confined within yourself, then that's, it's always a problem. The issue is really there, the inner confinement. So see how you can, with dreams, with visions, with feelings, with allowing new things to happen for you. Like perhaps, do a theme in a day, pick a word that you like, a wonderful word, a precious word that you want to experience, put it on the fridge for that day, and play with that throughout the day, and see how you can expand the perception, see how you can expand the space within yourself to experience those feelings that go with that word. You see, you can do so much, even perhaps in the small, confined physical space that many are experiencing around the world because of the situations. And those kind of, you see, those kind of changes make huge impact, and yet they don't cost anything, like as in money, for those that are saying, oh, but I would make a change, but perhaps I can't afford it. You see, it's those kind of things that your soul self will work through, that your soul self will bring its values, that your soul self will then enable the human also to change, to see, to expand, to experience new things, to allow more, to allow that crazy abundance to flow, an abundance that you can feel, that you can experience yourself in, that never ending, that, and also that has to do with just the realization that you are eternal. What an abundance is that? The abundance for a human self of time, for of course the soul self is timeless. But you see what I mean is all of these kind of different things that you can allow yourself to experience. And as you are allowing all of that to permeate to through you, then you vibrate different things out there, and your life changes, and all of a sudden new potentials appear, and all of a sudden you also have the ability to choose those potentials and to act on those potentials and to do those potentials, rather than perhaps, you see, for many of you, because you did need, and you do need that time for yourself, and from the childhood you didn't feel you fitted into the world, which is absolutely right that you didn't. You have sometimes retreated into your own world, but now you're realizing that there is an in breath and then there is an out breath, but the out breath is into those spaces that you co-create. You see, it's not into the spaces that other people have created from their limitation. For example, let's say what we mean by this is, let's say, like if you want to have a job, for example, you see, you go into arena that other people have co-created, and you feel, wow, there is a limitation there, perhaps I can't deal with that, blah blah blah, all of those kind of things, without actually realizing that now where you are, yes, you perhaps go into someone else's creation, but while you're there, you change it. It changes to suit you. You see, so nothing that you perhaps couldn't deal with in the past, because you couldn't deal with that thick, heavy mass consciousness, is no longer needs to be any barrier, because it's your presence and how you deal with that. And when you go to these kind of situations, you see, you can't fold that into the old habits. You need to bring your new self with you. You need to, within that space, or for those of you, let's say, that already are in those kind of spaces that you perhaps don't like, but it is in those spaces that you allow your awareness, allow yourself to be in that now moment, allow yourself to feel your body. And the more you do that, you bring the I am that I am, and then you vibrate, you radiate that out, and that changes that situation. And that change to that situation can be that the actual situation itself changes, or all of a sudden a new opportunity comes for you and you walk out, or something like that. You see, that's how you do it. It can initially be frustrating for the human being, because the human being thinks it's like, okay, I have this magic wand, and all of a sudden this magic wand just is just going to change everything. But that's not how it changes on the outside, because that would actually mean that this magic wand changes on the outside, but on the inside of you nothing has changed. You see, there is a reason why you are in all of the spaces of your life. You have co-created them, unconsciously or consciously or unconsciously. So how you get out of them, you recreate something, but you do it by being present with them. They may be uncomfortable, they may even be scary, but it's especially in those times when you are feeling perhaps fear, or when you're feeling so angry, or when you're feeling so frustrated, you stop and you allow, and you bring your I am that I am into that situation. And sometimes you have to do it over and over again and see how it changes. And see how it changes. You will be amazed. Ask those that are already living that life. Okay, let's see. Perhaps there is one question. No, I believe there is no questions today. And so, dear friends, until next time, it's been such a pleasure and it's been such an honor to play with you in this space today. Thank you.